Hello and welcome to another Intro to Programming and Database tutorial. In this tutorial, I will going to teach you how to do modularization using functions and procedures, and also we will going to learn that not only the main can call the functions and the procedures, but they can also be called by other procedures. So for example, here I will going to be calling calculate right from display, and then I'll be calling display input salary, input ID, and input name right from the main. Input salary, input ID, and input name are functions, and display and calculate are subprocedures. Subprocedures are non-value returning, and functions are value returning. So here's the code that we will going to be looking at and trying to understand. So in the main, I have declared three variables. One is of type string, one is of type integer, and the other one is of type double. Each one of the variables will going to accept its input from the functions outside of the main, but main will not going to be used to accept an input, and that's exactly what modularization does. It allows you to divide the job among the other individuals so that you are just controlling it and you are not doing everything by yourself, just like a manager in a workplace. So what name does, it makes a call to input name. What ID does, it makes a call to input ID. And what salary does, it makes a call to input salary. So now let's go and visit each one of them one by one. So you can also collapse the modules that you don't need to see in VB. And here you can see in the input name, all it does, it asks user that I want you to enter an input for me in a variable called name. Now this name is local to input name, and this name is local to main, so they're not related to each other. So that is why this function would have to write a return statement and should have to return the variable name. When the variable name gets returned, it now comes to this line and it gets assigned to the name in the main. Also, you will notice the difference between a subprocedure and a function, and you can see it very clearly here between main and input name, that main is a subprocedure, so it starts with sub, ends with sub. On the other hand, input name starts with a function and ends with a function. Functions do require two additional things. Number one, what kind of value this function will be returning, and a return statement with name of a value or name of a variable or the actual value, what it will be returning. So if you come down and look at my input ID, you will find exactly the same infrastructure. Since I wanted to incorporate the other programming constructs right in this one example, what I did, I created a loop around my input. So what this loop will going to make sure is that the user will going to be forced to enter an ID if the ID is either less than 1001 or if it's greater than 9999. So I want all my employees' ID to be between 1001 and 9999 inclusive. So this while loop will going to actually let you do that. So this helps us in the modularization process to also review the loops that we have learned in the past, and also learn about how to get accept input from the user in variables. So we return a value back to the main. I've done something very similar in the input salary. Let's say if in our firm nobody should get less than $20,000 and the minimum wage is $20,000, then I can actually force, using a do-while loop, that keep looping if the salary entered is less than $20,000 and only accept the salary if it is greater than or equals to $20,000. So then that will going to accept the salary from user and will return it back to the main. So main is actually making a call to the three input statements, and then they are accepting the input for the main and returning back to the main. Now what main does, it calls display. Display receives three parameters, and the names of the parameters do not have to be same. So now let me expand on display. The main important thing is that their data types must be compatible. So that's something that you have to make sure that the sequence of the passing and the receiving parameters are the same. So you cannot pass a string into a double or a double into a string. So that's why I'm passing a string into a string, an integer into an integer, and a double into a double. The names don't have to be same. That's why I called this NM, that's Sal, and the middle one I kept the same, just so that you can see. All we're doing here is we're displaying those values back to the user. But now display makes a call to calculate. As I showed you in this diagram, the display will now going to make a call to calculate. So what calculate does, calculate receives a salary from the user. And what it does with the salary here, what I'm doing is I'm calculating the net salary and the tax amount. So I've created an array which holds 4 values. So that's how I can include an array in this example. So array index 0 through 3, size 4. Size 4 is the size of the array, and those elements are 0, 1, 2, 3. And now in an if condition, I'm putting some ranges, some brackets. So if salary is greater than 150,000, then 35% of the salary will be the tax amount. If the salary is between 100,000 and 150,000, then the salary, then the tax amount will be the 30%. So that's why it is going to index location this. And if the salary is between 70,000 and less than 100,000, then we're going to be 25% of the salary will be in taxes. Anything other than that will going to be 20%. And as we know, when we're accepting salary, that no salary can be less than 20,000, so at least minimum 20,000 will going to come through. So, and then once we have calculated the tax amount, we deduct the tax amount from the salary to calculate the net, and then we display both outputs back to the user. So now let's try to run it just so that you can see how it works. I accept the name of the person from the user. I enter the ID. If ID is not within the range, it gives me an error. Now let me try a longer number. Again, it keeps asking me for an ID until the ID is 4 digits long and within that range. And now it asks me for a salary. Let's say if I enter a salary of 19,000, which is less than 20,000. So it asks me to enter the salary again. Until and unless I enter a salary which is within that range, it's going to keep asking. As soon as I provide a value that is acceptable in the program, it performs the calculations for me and displays the output to me. So that's something very, very neat in this example that you have seen, that we have gone over all programming constructs that you have learned in this course, which are not limited to, but include functions, procedures, arrays, iterative controls, loops, which are conditional statements like if, else, we have covered AND operator, we have covered OR operator, we have covered the multiplication, subtraction, variable declaration, arrays, almost all the concepts that we have learned in the procedure-oriented programming we have covered in this one brief tutorial. So if you go over this tutorial, you review it, you master it, you pretty much have an opportunity of refreshing almost most of the procedure-oriented programming concepts. Hope you would have enjoyed this tutorial. Catch you in the next one. Have a great day. Thank you for watching.